Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of this series called Stand Up and Out on the Forgotten Generation podcast with your host, Troy. This series is about amplifying the lost voices of young people that are misrepresented in SEND and invisible disabilities, showing lived experiences to stand up and out in the world on their journeys. And today's guest on this episode is Thomas Grimwood. Would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, age, and what is one word that describes you and your disability to the listeners?
Hi, my name is Thomas Grimwood. I am currently 19 years old, and I would describe my disability as powerful because for me, I thought of this analogy. I feel like my disabilities are similar to the X-Men in Marvel Comics because it's not a one-for-one comparison, but like the X-Men have something genetically that gives them powers, and my disabilities allow me to think differently, which is amazing. And I know on paper it's not as cool as having metal claws or lasers or super speed, but yeah, I'm very proud and happy of my autism and my palsy as well.
Wow, amazing intro. It's so good to have you on this episode and to start this series. And so, what is your journey as a neurodiverse young person?
So there's quite a lot to unpack. I'll start with like the prologue of my toddler years. Not very memorable, but when I was a toddler, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and with my autism, I remember that I was told that I was getting checked for something in my blood, and autism isn't related to blood, but I think that they also did a check or a test, and I got my autism diagnosis. So that's the prologue. Also, in my toddler years, I went to America for like an operation to help me to walk and talk. There was a lot of money raised for it, and now I can walk, dance, and talk thoughts, which can be problematic at the dinner table, as I can do more talking than eating. But I feel like my journey in talking about neurodiversity started in actually, before that, so there are some things that led to me getting the Diana Award. Also, my drama group Ariel, which is absolutely amazing. I was originally part of a special needs class for people with disabilities, things like that, and I also started doing Lambda exams, which are 2 or 3 monologues, and I believe it was around grade 3. I also did a workshop of which was Grease, amazing musical, and I met lots of amazing people from different academies, and some amazing people from the academy I went to, but there I realised they didn't go to the same classes as me, and by doing some extreme detective work, and by that I mean just looking at leaflets, I realised there was a mainstream class, and about a month or two I joined them, and yeah, I absolutely love doing it, and it's amazing. And I remember in early 2024 I started like researching more about autism, like reading books about it, both non-fiction and fiction, and I became really passionate about it, and I started coming out as autistic to my friends, and it's been really wonderful. Like, one thing I'll always be grateful for to my friends is they don't treat me any differently after I told them that I have autism. And that year was the first year I did some fundraising for the National Autistic Society, which is an incredible charity that helps people with autism and their families. That year, I raised £1,800, and later on in the year, Ariel nominated me for the Diana Award, which is a prestigious award awarded to people aged, I believe, 11 to 25 who've made an impact in their local community. And it's one of the most rewarding things to happen to me. Like, it felt amazing to be recognised alongside so many other young people who have set up organisations and made positive impacts in their local community. And in 2025, I did another fundraiser for the National Autistic Society, and I do want to do one every year, to be honest. And I started being more public about my autism, talking about things I love about it, um, talking about myth busting, like debunking some false things about autism. And yeah, I do feel really proud of my journey.
Wow. Just like, and your journey has been so, so inspiring. You've actually come a long way from the Diana Award, from your and your dance costume mentioned as well. And just all the different things you've been doing, like fundraising and because and also books as well, because you love reading, don't you?
Yes, it's like one of my major passions, one of my special interests. Like my book, especially YA books, like books about teenagers. I have like an army of books about teenagers and like one book about adult characters.
And that is so an extraordinary. Like you've done such incredible work and you should be so proud of yourself. Like you really
Thank
are
you.
so, so an inspiring and your journey is absolutely incredible. And so who inspired you to make a difference in your community as a neurodivergent person?
So, that's an interesting question because I find it difficult to pinpoint one specific source, but some books I read, like Can You See Me series by Libby Scott and Rebecca Westcott. Those books were very amazing. There's such good insight into people with autism. And I'd say this is gonna sound High School Musical levels of cheesy, but my friends and family, like they're all amazing people who are very kind, caring, compassionate. It and especially like when I first joined mainstream, I've said this before, but they've been very kind to me, and I said I was like a baby of the group, just joined, and yeah, all of them are very amazing.
I absolutely love how you mentioned about your friends and family. I think that's so important that they like inspired you and to make that difference. And like High School Musical, I love High School Musical, so incredible. As what has been your personal barriers and experiences you faced in your journey?
So personal barriers, I'd say there's a time academically where I felt very lonely and isolated. And I did have all my friends from drama outside of school, and I'm very grateful. But with schools and educational environments, it can be like 3 to 5 days a week of being alone, and that felt quite tricky, and I really struggled with that. And one other thing is like masking. And I just want to be clear, I love performing arts, I love acting, I'll do it for the rest of my life. But with masking, it felt like I wasn't being myself. At times, like at best, there were aspects of myself that were genuinely me, but there were times where I didn't feel upbeat as usual or as quippy as usual. And yeah, that felt really challenging. And I just want to be clear, there were some times where I felt alone, but I just want to be clear, like the people I was in classes with weren't bad people, and all the teachers were very lovely, but the students I was with, they are good people. It's just sometimes like I use this analogy like, say I'm like a pizza and they're like chocolate. Both are great and delicious, but they might not make the best combo. Oh, so yeah. So it's something like that, but now I'm in a better place academically, socially, and mentally. And like with the difficult experiences, they're important to me. Like they're not the top 10 highlights of my life, but because of them, they're like I feel like it can help me relate to people, and it's like I don't want anyone to feel ostracized or alone. So yeah.
I absolutely agree with you on what you just said there, because it and you can feel very life can feel hard when you're masking, and especially in education settings where most people don't understand who you are and you're autistic and your disability, and it can be difficult, but also the academic side of things, trying to get the good grades. But in reality, sometimes not all young people are going to be able to get those grades that we want because it's going to be hard and it's a barrier. It is a struggle. Did you get any support from that?
Yeah, it can be quite tricky. I was still able to make time to enjoy myself, like at home or with my friends from drama, and I feel like I should highlight special interests because they're very important. Like, it can lead to joy, connection, and like there are lots of times I enjoy talking about High School Musical or Sonic the Hedgehog, things like that, or Persona as well, and some other things as well.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important about your special interest, because like High School Musical and Sonic the Hedgehog really helped you in your journey for who you are. And so, what are the key issues you think young people with special educational needs and disabilities are facing right now, and why?
That's an interesting question because there are a few things, and I'm not as in tune with like news things like that, but I think I'd say like there are like with mental health, it can also be hard for people who are neurodivergent, and I do feel quite lucky if I have lots of people in my life who help, but there are some people who struggle to access that. Like I don't know how I can't comment on any experiences in mainstream schools because I wasn't in any like mainstream academic schools, but I feel like maybe finding connection could be very helpful. All big, all things like that, and I also think allowing people to be themselves because masking is like quite draining and it can lead to some crises. Like if you've masked for a long time, I feel like when you take off the mask, it can be tricky to like figure out was that actually me or was that all a lie, where some parts real, some parts not. Also, I feel like giving neurodiverse people the ability to be themselves, support them, and give them a community and sense of belonging.
Well said, absolutely well said, on what you just said about masking and how it can be actually hard for a neurodivergent person to feel masking because I do that all the time in certain situations. I mask myself, and after it can feel draining. And because you want to prove yourself all the time in different places. But like you said, sense of belonging. Feeling like you belong in that space because every young person deserves a voice. Every young person deserves the opportunity and a chance to shine and a chance to have a say on issues that they care about. So it's about that sense of belonging. And you absolutely said it so right in that. But also You touched on about mental health, and that is also a big issue for those with disabilities and neurodivergent people. Is that and they struggle with mental health as well as other young people who struggle with mental health, and that is a challenge. That is something that is an issue, like, and that is still going on at the moment.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of things of mental health in like mainstream media, and it doesn't just affect people who are neurodiverse, but everyone really. And I feel like with being neurodiverse, like for me, it's quite tricky to figure out some things. Like, for example, on one hand, like it's a very like sometimes I want to share how I'm feeling, but I don't want to bring other people down. So it can be quite tricky to find a balance.
Absolutely, yes. It can be hard to find a balance, and especially trying to fit in and work out who you are as a person. Everyone is not the same. Everyone's going to be different and very unique in their own special way.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on something else if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like with autism, like I feel like I have seen that I have read a few books about or people with autism, and there is an increase in like books about people with autism, but I feel like representation is also very important, and I would love to see more representation, like in lots of different media, like in films, shows, and one thing I will say is that like autism is a spectrum. So you can have some people with autism who are more introverted and limited interests, and you can have some people with autism extroverted and a variety of interests. And like I really like seeing people advocate about autism and other disabilities, like for example with the traitors, as like I love that show, but I don't want to class it as a special interest because there's about people in real life, and if I classed it as a special interest, I feel like it might be a bit disrespectful. But like on the traitors, like with UK season 3, you have like Dan who has autism and Jake with cerebral palsy, and like I really related to Dan's thought process of the game. Like I think I'd approach it in a more logical way like he did. And Jake, there's one thing he said about cerebral palsy where even if he's not as strong physically, he's mentally really strong. And that I feel like that spoke to me, and is one of the things that made me love my disabilities more. And plus, they both seem like really lovely guys. Like, they're both very kind to people. So, yeah.
Wow, absolutely. And I think it's so, so important, just be, kind and like, I like everyone's disability is different and representation is so, so important and so key. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And so if you were a Prime Minister or an MP, what would you do and say to them in better supporting our voice?
So, if I was in their shoes, I think it's best to talk to people who are neurodiverse and find out what they want, because we can't just assume like that, oh, they want this, oh, they want that. Ask them what they want and follow up on that. And not only that, provide like feedback loops, like maybe a newsletter or something to say, we've taken your feedback, we're at this stage, but we plan on progressing to X, Y, and Z. Which would be very helpful and beneficial because, like, you can say, oh, we're doing this, but it's better to provide proof and show you are acting and doing stuff about it.
Absolutely. And I think that would be such good if you're a Prime Minister. I would absolutely vote if you were the Prime Minister, making things better for young people and with disabilities. I think that is very, very important, like a newsletter to really showcase what's happening for young people with disabilities and just very much asking them on what you said, like assuming about certain things, like maybe education and what's happening there, maybe like on better support, maybe it could be preparing for adulthood, life skills, more work experience, more on job opportunities in different areas to include those young people with disabilities to have a job.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one other thing that could help is like maybe to the neurodiverse people know educationally there's not like one strict option. Like if you asked me a few years ago, or maybe like 7 or more-ish years ago, I would think the only option is like nursery, primary, secondary, uni. And that works for some people. Like, I have some friends who are now at university and they're amazing and doing incredible things. But I think it's also important to let them know, like, things like you can go to college or like university is optional. You can get a job or an apprenticeship. Because like I feel like the like education isn't always a narrow line. If you're listening on audio, I'm drawing like how people think education could be normally like a straight line when it could actually be like a more journey. I'm just squiggling about. Mm.
Yeah, I think because I absolutely think what you said is so, so important. And yes, love that. And so what is your one piece of advice to a young person wanting to stand up and out to the world but don't know how to?
So my advice, like I know that like a dream scenario could be to like reach thousands of people, but my advice would be start small because like when I started coming out to people that's autistic, I told one person I really trusted it. Then I started telling more people, like I remember it was a group of three. Then I posted on my social media, which was private at the time, and my friends followed me on there. Then I became more public about it. And yeah, and I do remember, like with my very small podcast, I did some episodes about autism, and one of my dad's mates said, "Oh, I listened to Thomas's podcast about autism, and I found the books he recommended on it, and they felt really rewarding." And combining both 2024 and 2025's fundraisers, I have raised over £4,000, and then it feels really rewarding to have that impact. And I remember one day where I spoke at a panel of like head teachers, like people important in education environments, and I did a talk about like special educational needs with some other people involved as well. And although I do want to perform on stage or on film, that day was one of the most rewarding days for me. And there's one funny moment where our original plan was to go to one lecture, then another lecture, then we'd host our own workshop. But I said in the first one, actually, I want to mingle with a few people to see if I can get them to come to the lunchtime workshop. Yeah. And I jokingly called myself like Rogue One after the Star Wars film.
Wow, I love that. I love your experiences. I think that's incredible. And amazing advice to American people who are listening on to this episode, because you've really shown a lot of your own experiences in this, but also really and inspired me as well, and I'm sure others as well, and with your journey. And that's it for today's episode. But thank you, Thomas, for coming on today's As Stand Up and Out series to really highlight the important conversation of neurodiverse and invisible disabilities.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to do something like this. I'm really happy that I can help spread awareness about neurodiversity, like some strengths and how to help with it. Here, like how we can support people with neurodiversity. So it's been a pleasure.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Please support the podcast by subscribing and rating the podcast. I'd love to hear what you like and what could be better for future episodes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram and iwill.troy, and also on X, iwill_Troy. Tune in to next week's episode.